Hey, listen to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and MP. As always, I'm Grady, and live on Skype we've got Josh.
Hey!
Last week my audio might have been a little dodgy because we were traveling, and this week my audio might be a little dodgy because I've come down with a little bit of an illness, but that is not gonna stop me from sitting here and previewing SummerSlam 2023 with you. We got 8 matches announced for the card at time of recording. And let's start off with the most insignificant one. We got ourselves a SummerSlam Battle Royal, spun up out of nowhere, including at the moment LA Knight, Sheamus, Tommaso Ciampa, Shinsuke Nakamura, Otis, and Chad Gable.
I will say this: Chad Gable had a heck of a match with Gunther, and I think deserves a future title match. On Raw.
He survived.
That said, I think this is just to get LA Knight a win.
Oof.
And that's not a bad thing if you necessarily. I mean, just ask, I don't know, Damian Priest what winning a random battle royal that means nothing can do for you?
Yeah, it's sometimes, you know, we've come from this weird history where sometimes a battle royal does actually mean, you know, straight up nothing, even if there is a trophy for it. You know, we think to some of the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal winners, and then, yeah, as you mentioned, other random battle royals like Damian Priest's win, and boom, you're shot into stardom. And we already thought LA Knight, you know, is on that trajectory, he's on that escalator. So maybe this is just the next step along that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something to have him do something as we get towards probably a United States title reign, which you notice is not being defended on SummerSlam. Just pointing that out.
Yeah.
And that's...
After we've had this whole, you know, number one contendership bracket, which I felt like LA Knight was going to win, and I felt like, you know, Austin Theory versus LA Knight was going to be our SummerSlam match, and instead the grand finals for the number one contendership is Santos Escobar, Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio gets injured, Santos picks up the win, and now we're getting ourselves Austin Theory versus Escobar. Where I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be our luck. They'll make it for SummerSlam tomorrow on SmackDown. In which case, I still predict Austin Theory retains. Because I believe LA Knight is the guy to beat him for the title. But I think LA Knight wins this. I mean, he did apparently, supposedly, overtake the guy in WWE in merch sales this past month. So
yeah, Knight's been moving merch. Knight's been getting that crowd behind him. It seems foolish to either not have him win or at least be, you know, screwed out of the victory at the last moment kind of thing.
Yeah, but you can't do that too many times. I mean, they just did that with the Money in the Bank briefcase.
You are true.
I think it is just a random battle royal that won't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Just as Braun Strowman on that one. And, but I think it's just going to be a another stepping stone as he works his way up the card.
And as LA Knight works his way up the card, let's us work our way up the card. We got ourselves our MMA rules match, Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler, the blood feud boiling over.
I'm kind of disappointed it's not like a Lions Den match with the return of Ken Shamrock or something. But it should be interesting to see how they tried to work this into it. It does also remind us of the fact that UFC and WWE are one company now.
That is true.
Owned by one company. So, I think I really want to say Shayna Baszler here. I really want to.
Then do it.
But I think Ronda Rousey wins.
No.
As much as it angers me, because I think Shayna would really use it, and I don't think Ronda has much time left in WWE.
Well, I will be the one then. I will come out here and I will say that Shayna Baszler picks up the win. I do think the stipulation is interesting. We've obviously had multiple MMA-like match types. You know, you mentioned Lions Den. We've also had the stuff Thatcher was doing.
And the thing that Riddle did in NXT.
Yeah, so
with the 2 cages.
we've had a bunch of different MMA-like stuff, and so when you just call it an MMA rules match, it just leaves it a little open on I don't know. It feels a little empty. But doesn't matter because Shayna Baszler's gonna win, and I'm gonna be happy, and I'm gonna celebrate it, and Rousey will go off into the sunset. That second part not as necessary as the Baszler win. Let's go Logan Paul Ricochet. We've been building it up a little bit at WrestleMania, also Rumble, a little bit at Money in the Bank, and here it is. This is our SummerSlam Logan Paul match.
Yeah, I think it'll be a fire match. They brought more and more out of Ricochet with this whole feud, which is always a good thing. When you can get any personality out of him, that's a good thing.
Not the easiest task in the world.
No. Yeah, Ricochet was definitely a lot better off with the mask on in Lucha Underground.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the end, as much as I want to go with my guy from Kentucky, I can't. This is Logan Paul we're talking about. And I just think he wins, as much as it pains me to say.
It sounds like this whole pay-per-view is going to be a little painful for you to be talking about the winners of. But yeah, Ricochet and Paul will put on a good match, I'm sure. They have already hinted at it with these previous clashes at these other shows, but if you just look at the stock of the two characters or the stock of the two performers, one of them is a lot higher than the other. Ricochet would be, slingshotted into stardom with a win here, but Paul's also had a couple losses. So,
one of these guys has faced the undisputed Universal Champion. One of these guys has never faced for a world title at all. Which one do you think's going to win?
Probably the famous YouTuber.
Yeah.
We're on the card now. Intercontinental Championship. We saw it in London. We're going to get it. Gunther defending his title against Drew McIntyre. Well, defending his title and his historic reign.
If there's anybody on the roster that can beat Gunther, it is Drew McIntyre. However, I think they are going to go for the record. So I think Drew loses dirty. I don't think it's a clean match. So that they will set up another match between Drew and Gunther down the road after that record is broken. And that's maybe when Drew wins the title.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think Gunther hits day 455.
Yeah, I was about to ask how far away we were, or like what day that was.
We're like 30 days. We're like 30 days or something.
Okay.
I can look that up real fast.
The math. But yeah, I agree. I think Drew McIntyre, former world champ, he's been having a great run. Gunther, obviously, on the top of the world right now, been running the division when there hasn't been a world champ around. But when you've got history so close, and just do
he
it.
is 37 days currently away from it.
Okay.
Because he's day 417 as of recording. In U.S. time, that's on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And he needs to get to 454 to tie, 455 to break. So that's
like 9th September?
30. Yeah, that's 38 days. Which would be roughly around the second week of September. Which I don't think there is a pay-per-view until...
No, I was just scrolling down.
About the middle of
2nd of September for Payback.
Yeah.
Which I think is too early.
Maybe that, yeah. So that might be like a cookie cutter where it's... Maybe they'll do like a random... It's something they don't do often. Like a time limit draw or something. Like maybe they have them fight for like 30 minutes and then suddenly decide, well, the match is over because neither person won, or maybe they just knock each other out and get counted out.
And get themselves a stipulation for later down the line.
Yeah. But I do think, and honestly, out of everybody on the rosters, I think Gunther is a phenomenal choice to break that record.
Mm-hmm.
He's got more talent in his pinky inside the ring than what Honky Tonk did inside the ring. Honky Tonk had all the charisma in the world, which is mostly what carried his reign. Gunther has done it both ways. He's been very charismatic at times. He doesn't have to be outly charismatic, but he has been charismatic, and he can out-wrestle pretty much almost anybody in the company.
Yeah. I think Gunther's shown it time and time again, right? He's holding records left, right, and center with his title reigns. He's putting on bangers with everybody. Look at that Gunther, McIntyre, Sheamus triple threat. That's really all the recent evidence you need for that. I'd be very happy to have Gunther's name carved into the record books. It's always funny when we're talking about the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion. You're thinking of all these amazing Intercontinental Champions over the years, and then it settles down. You're like, oh, it's Honky Tonk Man, And so having a name that means as much, or having a name that is so well regarded, in ring charisma, everything you said, in Gunther can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and think about it. We have for probably 2 decades now said the Intercontinental title, which was at one point just as important as the WWE Championship, because it was the workhorse championship. It was the championship that went on every single night and put on a great show, while you had the Hogans and etc. were bringing in the large crowds. And then we got into the point where it was like the Intercontinental title didn't matter. About 99, I think that was when it was starting to become irrelevant. There were still some moments it had, but it was like eventually it became a burden on whoever held it. And then eventually it became a curse, because we talked for years how the person holding it would get hurt.
Yeah. Had a rough time.
And then we had The Miz try to bring it back. And that worked for a while, but only because it was The Miz. And as soon as he lost it the last time, after the 8th reign, it went back to obscurity. And now we have Gunther bringing it back to what it was almost 2 decades ago. I think that's a huge thing to say for Gunther. I know people want LA Knight to win the Royal Rumble. I think Gunther deserves it. I think Gunther deserves the main event WrestleMania next year. And I will not get off that ledge. I'll jump before I get off of it.
Now, all aboard the Gunther train. Choo-choo. We're roughly halfway through. We still got the main 4 matches of the card to talk about, but I will cut into our entrance theme this week. It is the theme for SummerSlam, and once again, it's one of those rare times where I get to play you an actual song. And you're back to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and NPR. I'm Grady, he's Josh. Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar, 3. No stip, straight up singles match, 1-on-1.
Well, after the documentary that came out, the fact that Brock Lesnar kicked his ass on Raw, and the fact that Brock won the last match, Cody wins. Pretty simple.
Yeah, I agree. It is pretty simple. It's not a crazy one, this. Cody Rhodes has been, pretty on top of things since he's come back. There's been a couple losses here and there. But with this feud with Brock Lesnar, it's Cody on top. You don't put out these massive promotional materials about people and try and push them. We know Cody still has his eyes set on Roman's title later on down the line. Brock's gonna take losses and be perfectly fine. I don't know. This one feels the most easy to pick, but I can't forget the Brock Lesnar rule, which is never count out Brock Lesnar, and that's gonna come up later on in the night as well. Because we do have ourselves a triple threat match for the WWE Women's Championship: Asuka versus Bianca Belair versus Charlotte Flair, and again, can't forget the Brock Lesnar rule. Never count out Charlotte Flair in a title match.
That's what I was going to say. I think this will be a fantastic match for the women. I think all three are fantastic talents. You have Charlotte, who's just head and shoulders above everybody else. Regardless of how you feel about her or anything, she is the pinnacle of the women's division. It's her and then everybody else after a chasm. Bianca is amazing, but she just had, basically, for the better part of 3 years as champion. Off and on. Asuka just got the title reign not 2 months ago. I think she retains, and I think Charlotte takes the fall.
Okay. If that's the complete opposite of the Brock Lesnar rule being applied to this match.
Yep.
I agree. I do think Asuka needs the win here. I think people do start to get a little more on the repetitive side of, Charlotte returns, Charlotte challenges for the title, Charlotte wins the title. I think having a feud away from the title could be best, and with Bianca sitting right there, go for it. We already know Io Sky holding that briefcase is a big threat to Asuka as well, and I think that's the better match for the cash-in.
Yeah. Besides, if we know if Charlotte Flair wins, Io Sky is cashing in. Because that's what happens when Charlotte Flair wins the title and there's a briefcase around.
That's true. Charlotte can't hold the title for very long.
So, yeah, I think Asuka retains, and I think it eventually does set up Io Sky versus Asuka, which is the match everybody wants anyway.
Yeah. Book it. Last two matches, let's go with the World Heavyweight Championship. Seth Rollins defending against Finn Balor once again, with Damian Priest sitting in the wings holding that big green briefcase.
Who thought about cashing in on Monday.
But didn't.
Yeah. Again, two fantastic talents. Should put on a banger match. I think Seth retains. Whether or not he walks out of SummerSlam with the title is a different story altogether. But I think he beats Finn here. And I think that is what leads to Finn being kicked out of Judgment Day.
Mm-hmm. We keep calling it. They gotta do it eventually.
Yeah. He is the only person without some sort of accessory at the moment. I say it that way because you have Rhea and Dom with both title belts, and then you have Damian with a briefcase. So yeah, I think this is a case where I think Rollins just rolls over him. It barely survives in the process, and then we see if the briefcase gets used. This is a possibility where the men's briefcase could actually get used before the win.
I think for sure it'll be teased, right?
Yeah,
no, it'll
definitely be teased. It's just a question of, does the trigger get pulled? If it does, is that part of what gets Finn kicked out of the group? Because Damian Priest actually brings the title home. I just don't know, but I just think there's more. It's more interesting having the briefcase around and just using it for storyline purposes.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how this match plays out. There's so many aspects of it, so many different chess pieces on the board. Seth versus Finn has pretty much been the feud for this World Heavyweight Championship since it has been brought back or created. Seth's been a great champ, and Finn Balor has tried and been unable to capture that championship. Judgment Day in the wings, Damian Priest with the briefcase. A lot of combustible elements there. Almost as many combustible elements as our main event, Roman Reigns defending his undisputed WWE Universal Championship and the title of Tribal Chief in a no disqualifications tribal combat match against Jey Uso.
Yeah, this has a lot of combustible elements, as you said. There are a lot of things they can do here. Jey could straight up win the match and nobody would bat an eyelash, because I think that he built it to the point where it's believable that he could be the Universal Champion. But I think at the end of the day, come hell or high water, Roman Reigns retains.
Yeah, I don't know how he keeps doing it, but the man keeps doing it.
Yeah. Whether it's by introducing another bit player to the bloodline that's not connected to the family in some way, thus getting around the whole tribal combat thing. Solo Sikoa goes rogue and gets involved in the match, thus causing problems between him and Roman. Or it's just a clean win.
Yeah,
which is very possible. I mean, it is Roman Reigns after all.
We got to apply the Brock Lesnar rule again to Roman Reigns. Never count him out. There's been so many times we've counted Roman Reigns out. We thought maybe this is the end of the reign, and the guy just keeps holding on. I think you said it best about the whole through hell or high water.
Yeah, there's definitely will be a moment where we will be faked out. Because Roman is the best person at kicking out at 2 7/8. We will think Jey won the title at some point during the match, but it won't happen. And maybe this is what gets it over the top to actually happening, is just predicting against it happening.
Maybe. There's just so much on the line here, and it's like this is the main event of the entire Bloodline storyline, and the decision on which way to go here really depends, like, what season 2 is going to hold, or I guess like season 6 or whatever at this point, right? What the next piece is going to be. What is that core storyline? There
are, take it with a grain of salt, a massive mountain worth of grain of salt. There are rumors out there that The Rock could show up at SummerSlam. And that could be the element that gets us to Rock Roman at some point.
I've almost lost hope in Rock Roman.
Yeah, I don't want to see it. I didn't want to see Rock versus the number of people he's faced since he came back to the family in 2011. It is what it is. I just think they want to go with... They have a specific plan for Roman at WrestleMania next year. I think he holds the title till then.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think I would go with having an Elimination Chamber match. And Cody running his way in. Even if it's not really a face thing to do. Winning the match and earning the number 1 contendership. And letting the Rumble winner go after the World Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, it's just so far away. It's so hard to tell what the plan is with Roman. But I think you're right. There is something written down. The next 6 months of Roman is entirely plotted out, and it's just us figuring out the path as it unveils itself. But I do think Solo Sikoa is going to be a big player in that road. But we'll have to wait and find out. There's like 2 minutes left. So NXT Great American Bash happened. I'll run down the results real quick and you can chat about whichever one of them you want to talk about. The family picked up the NXT Tag Team Championship. Gable Steveson debuted to a bunch of boos. Dominic Mysterio retained his title against Wes and Mustafa. Tiffany Stratton retained her title. And Carmelo Hayes successfully defended his title against Ilya as well.
Yep. Was a pretty darn good show. I do want to remind people that Gable Stevenson is not the first gold medalist to get booed in his debut. So, and that other one had a pretty damn good career. So, take it with what it is. Dominic is Dominic. He's awesome. Not much more you can say. It does look like he's going to be facing Dragon Lee next, with the possibility of Dragon Lee being the person that brings the title back to the NXT. Carmelo is amazing, and I'm looking forward to the day he shows up on Raw or SmackDown. And it looks like they're separating Trick Williams from him, so it might be sooner than we think.
Yeah, Trick wants to focus on himself a little bit.
I don't blame him. I personally would have loved to have seen them both holding belts of gold at some point. Because that would have been a heck of a visual. And like Trick said, right now fans just see him as a sidekick and nothing more. if he was holding gold at the same time Carmelo was, then you can't see him that way.
Yeah. I think Trick Williams is amazing in the role that he performs. And you're right, I do think people just see him as a bit part of the Carmelo stuff. And the guy is a great performer on his own right. He doesn't need Carmelo Hayes to be there and to prop up his career. So I'm interested in seeing what they do with him. And it looks like Ilya or Wesley lining up next on Carmelo Hayes as well. The NXT Championship is never short for people challenging for it.
Yep.
Well, that is pretty much all the time we got for this week. It's been great talking to you.
Bye, B.
You can visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/WrestlingRNDUp, our Twitter page, twitter.com/WrestlingRNDUp, our YouTube page, youtube.com/WrestlingRNDUp, and we will catch you next week with the results from SummerSlam.